Well, good morning. Welcome to Thought for the Day. I really didn't think there was going to be a thought today. I'd meant to record one yesterday evening, but I hadn't got around to it. And then when I woke up this morning, I had a number of ideas in my head that I might run with. As I thought them through, tried to shape the thought. They just didn't come together. So I thought, well, maybe I just check on the news, see if there's something that's happened that I can pick up on, something interesting that would be worth comment and reflection. So I turned on my phone, went to the BBC website. What's the news? President Trump's got coronavirus. If we didn't think, if we thought this crazy year couldn't get any crazier, it's just happened. How do we react to that? How on earth do we react to that? Is there a sort of pleasure that the arch denier has now had to face reality? Or is the prayer that God will be merciful to him? Prayer that he'll get through it. And his wife and his close assistant. How do we respond to it? And that just threw any thoughts that had been started to come together into complete confusion. So I thought, well, I'm just going to have to go downstairs, read my Bible, see what comes of it, and if there's no thought for the day, there's no thought for the day. So I went and I read my Bible and had a wonderful time with the Lord. And I thought I'd just share with you something of what I read and where God led me this morning. It was a very, very familiar passage. I'm working through trying to read the New Testament in Greek. I'm not very good at Greek, so often I have to look up a lot of the words. But this time, I almost recognised the passage, and as I saw the Greek words, they reminded me what was in the English, and I started to see the meaning. I didn't have to look up any words to get through to the end of it. This is what it said. I won't read it to you in Greek. I'll read it to you in English as I translated it. It said this: "Submit yourselves, therefore, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Clean your hands, you sinners. Purify your hearts, you double-minded. Be miserable, grieve and weep. Turn your laughter to grieving, and your joy to gloominess. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up." Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up. They're powerful words. I thought, look back at the last few days, what the chapter so far. This is the book of James, Jesus' brother. And he starts the chapter by asking, why do you fight? Why do you fight? He says, because of your desires, that war within you. You want something and don't have it, so you fight, and you even want to kill people to get what you want, what you don't want. He thinks about how destructive desires have been, that they lead us in completely the wrong direction, away from God, even to becoming God's enemies. But then, just before this passage, he said that God doesn't take this lying down. God doesn't leave us in that place where our desires are controlling us, because God gives us more grace. He opposes the proud. He opposes those who exalt themselves in what they want, but gives grace to the humble. And so what's the answer? Well, there at the beginning of this passage, to align ourselves with God's transforming, turning upside down work, to submit to God. And the passage shows that this submitting to God has an outward and an inward piece element. The outward piece is to recognise that when we give our desires power within us, we're actually giving the devil power within us. The devil leaps in, he plays on them, he plays on them to further his own aim of cutting us off from God. He uses our desires. You want that, he says, and God won't give it to you. He uses what we want to portray God as a spoilsport. He promises us happiness if we'll only give our desires what they want, especially if that brings us into conflict with other people, so that we think even more that we need to look after ourselves, make sure first of all that we're okay. And then, of course, that leads to unfruitful prayer as we turn in on ourselves and on our own desires. We plead selfishly, petulantly, knowing that we don't deserve it, and so not really expecting an answer. And so prayer becomes unfruitful, and the devil's rubbing his hands. And James calls us to recognise that, recognise who's behind this, rather than resisting God and in our desires being drawn near to the devil, to resist the devil, and he will flee from us. Shine the light of God's truth on him, like all other creatures of the darkness. He'll run away, cowering into the shadows. And then to draw near once again to God, to recognise that as we draw near to God, as we take those first steps nearer to God, he comes running out to meet us. He will draw near to us, like the father in the parable, who sees the prodigal son in the distance and just picks up his cloak and runs off to meet him, to throw his arms around him. That's what happens when we draw near to God. He longs to draw near to us. Submitting to God doesn't mean saying, "Oh yes, God, I'll do everything you say." Submitting to God means being welcomed back as his beloved child. But then there's an inner part too, those slightly troubling verses that talk about turning joy to gloominess and our laughter to grieving. And that's the piece where we have not only to let go of what the devil's doing in us, but also to let go of the lies we tell about ourselves. To admit the truth that we are double-minded sinners. We may be faithful, obedient churchgoers, we may not, but we're all double-minded sinners, people who do things that hurt others and hurt ourselves, people who are not consistent in their love for God, not even consistent in the things we believe ourselves. And James says, turn away from that too. Wash your hands of the things you're doing that are harmful. Purify your hearts. Let God in to do his transforming work. That's what his Spirit is there to do. And then to do an even harder thing, to let go of those ways, those insecure ways that we lift ourselves up. The laughter that sometimes comes at other people's expense. The joy we find in trivial things, in wasting time. Let go of those things as your crutch, he says. And we may think that when we let go of that, we'll have nothing. But isn't that actually the answer? That we come to the God who needs nothing, with nothing. Empty-handed I come, that song we've been singing a bit recently. Empty-handed I rejoice. And as we come to him truly empty-handed, with nothing, with no thought for the day, with no clear mind, no thing worth listening to, he will lift us up, just as he lifted me up from that wonderful time I had in his word just a few minutes ago. So humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up. May God bless you today.